level summary of what it is and then go through it?
Sure, it's 25 pages, but it's a lot of the same change throughout.
Okay.
So this is Michael Grady with Legislative Counsel. As you may all know, the Agency of Agriculture regulates the sale of certain fertilizers and other products in the state and registers them, make sure that they are labeled properly, make sure that they are weighed properly, they're not short weighted, make sure that they're not adulterated, and has enforcement authority to seize and check and inspect all the products that it registers. For decades, this chapter was just known as the fertilizer and lime chapter because really those were the products that the agency was registering. But there have been a lot of new products that have entered the market or that have been on the market for a long time, but the agency just wasn't registering. And over the past, I would say 5 years, you've started registering those products kind of piecemeal. 1 year was plant amendments, next year was soil amendments, then it was stimulants. And this was an issue that the entire country, all of the states were facing, these new products coming on and how to regulate them and what to call them. And you might not know, but there is an Association of American Plant Food Control Officers, the APCO. And so APCO met last year to look at this issue of how to regulate and basically name all these different substances. And they came forward with the Uniform Act, which is here. And the agency has taken the provisions from this Uniform Act and kind of overlaid that on their existing authority. And so that's what generally the bill does. It changes the terms plan amendment, soil amendment, and plant stimulant, biostimulant, and replaces those three terms with the term beneficial substance. And then there are some changes that are conforming. And then there are some changes that are specific to how to regulate beneficial substances. So that's what the bill do. A lot of the changes you're going to see plant amendment, soil amendment, plant biostimulant being replaced by beneficial substances. And but then there are some more substantive changes. So I'll start walking through the bill unless there are any questions.
Representative Nelson.
Do they have to prove they work first?
There is an efficacy requirement for all of these. Yes, for the beneficial substances, for all of the different kinds, they have to make an efficacy statement when they register on their registration form.
Won't tell you what I call
So this does not include fertilizers, though.
So this is the same chapter that fertilizer is in, but how fertilizer is registered, the fees it pays, all of that is not changing. Similarly, lime is not changing. What is changing is the reference to these types of substances. And then there's some additional substantive requirements for how you register and what you need to show.
But not compost. This is nothing to do with this.
This is generally not compost. There are some things that people call compost that could be brought in.
Like mushroom things or worm castings.
Yes, that have microorganisms in them. So that's a possibility.
Is beneficial defined anywhere? That word makes me nervous.
Well, why don't we look at the bill? Because there's a definition of beneficial substances, but not beneficial.
All right, let's go.
All right.
later.
So there is the existing chapter in law, chapter 28 for fertilizer and lime. But I think it was 2 years ago, you renamed that chapter's title as fertilizer line, plant amendment, plant biostimulant, and soil amendment. And you're replacing that. Now it's fertilizer, lime, and beneficial substances law. The Agency of Ag is the enforcing entity. There's a definition of ag lime, which is pretty limited. And then you get to the definition of beneficial substance. It's any substance or compound other than primary, secondary, and microplant nutrients, fertilizers. So it's anything besides fertilizers, and it also excludes pesticides that can be demonstrated by scientific research to be beneficial to one or more species of plant, soil, or media. So it has to be shown by the science to be beneficial to one or more species of plant, soil, or media. They include plant amendments, plant biostimulants, plant inoculants, soil amendments, soil inoculants, and other chemical or biological substances beneficial to plants or their growing environment. So that last phrase is important to you, it's important to the agency, and it's important to me. It means that you won't have to keep coming back here to amend this every time there's a new type of beneficial substance that enters the market and needs to be registered. The agency can just assert its authority under this chapter to have that product registered. Now, the definitions of plant amendment, plant biostimulant are not changing. Same with soil amendment. I do want to look at the definition of soil amendment. But there are definitions that are added. So here is plant amendment. It's any substance applied to plants or seeds that is intended to improve growth, yield, product quality, etc., except for fertilizer, soil amendments, ag liming materials, animal and vegetable manures, pesticides, plant regulators, and other materials exempted by rule. So there are exceptions from what these are. Plant biostimulant that definition is changing to conform with the Uniform Bill. So it's a substance, microorganism, or mixtures that, when applied, the seeds, plants, the rhizosphere, soil, or other growth media act to support a plant's natural nutrition processes independently of the biostimulant's nutrient content. The plant biostimulant thereby improves nutrient availability, uptake, or use efficiency, tolerance to abiotic stress, and consequent growth, development, quality, or yield. So when you initially adopted the definition of plant biostimulant, you didn't really know how to define it. And that's why there was that sentence at the end that the secretary may modify the definition in order to maintain consistency with the USDA. This is consistent with the USDA. It's what the Association of American Plant Food Control officials have recommended. So when you first entered the regulatory field with this substance, you didn't quite know how to define it, and now it has a more universally accepted definition. Plant inoculant is a new definition. It's a product consisting of microorganisms to be applied to the plant or soil for the purpose of enhancing the availability of uptake or plant nutrients through the soils. Then there's a definition of soil amendment. Soil amendment does not mean fertilizers, agricultural liming, materials, unprocessed animal manures, unprocessed vegetable manure, besides another. A compost product from a facility under the jurisdiction of A&R shall not be regulated as a soil amendment unless marketed and distributed for use in the production of an agricultural commodity. So there are composts that can be in this under this definition, but anything that A&R is regulating, which means it's produced from septic or sludge, is not going to be regulated under this chapter. Then you have a soil inoculant. It's a microbial product that is applied to colonize the soil to benefit soil chemistry, biology, or structure. And so those are the main definitions. And then you get into all these conforming definitions. Registration, replacing plant amendment, plant biostimulant, or soil amendment with beneficial substance. You have to register your beneficial substance with the agency. It's $85 a product per year. And that fee is put into a special fund that is used by the agency largely to support this program, the feed and seed and fertilizer fund, but it also supports ag water quality as well.
Just had earlier today the budget presentation from Ag, and they showed us percentage of their revenue, not revenue, money coming in was from different areas. Special funds was one of them. So this is an example.
This used to be like the pot of gold. This is where the agency would go whenever they needed something, that and the animal food registration fee, because there's pretty broad authority in both of those funds for how it can be used. But with ag water quality coming along, there's been more demand on this fund than in the past, and some of the money goes to ag water quality specifically.
And else,
Has that fee been $85 for quite some time?
No. I would have to check, but I believe in the last 5 years it's been raised.
Okay. Because that's the only beneficial thing I could see to most of these products.
But it's not just the beneficial substances that are paying them, it's the fertilizer and the lime that's paying it too.
Representative O'Brien.
Like, it was saying here that the APCO is an organization of fertilizer control officials from each state. So would our agency then have someone send them?
You'd be shocked to know how many different associations are out there among the different states, just on like the Association of Sanitary Sewer Officials, you know, and it's like there's all kinds of those associations. And yes, I believe it's Steve Dwinell's division, but I don't know who went to.
On that farm.
Right. So when you register your beneficial substance, you have to provide its specific formulation. And even though different brands might have the same formulation, you can basically have to require registration of the different brands. But there's opportunity also to say that, no, it's the same formulation. I don't need to register the same beneficial substance twice, because what's being registered is the product. It's the same thing for pesticides. It's the same thing for animal food. You register your product in order to sell it. You're not registering every single type of product that you sell. Or if you have a plant biostimulant, you're just registering that specific plant biostimulant. You don't need to pay a fee every time you sell it. But you need to register in order to sell it. Except if you're fertilizer, you also need to pay a tonnage fee. And that fee basically is reported back to the agency, and it's deposited in the special fund on page 10, line 14 to 18, the creation of this fund to be used to implement the title and any other provisions of law relating to feeds and seeds. So that's why this used to be the pot of gold, because it was any other provision that you could relate to feed and seed. And there were some strained connections made in the past. That is largely ended because of the demand on the fund. Then there's a label requirement. Everything fertilizer and lime has to have a label. Let's go down to beneficial substances. What they need to show on their label. You need to show net weight, brand, purpose statement, identifying what it's for. There's no longer a guaranteed analysis, but there needs to now be a statement of composition showing the amount of each ingredient and which is the product primary responsible for its intended uses. And then you have to name the beneficial substance, the percentage of it in the product, its genus. And then there's Where is the efficacy? There's the
Question here, Mike, from.
Like, I was just wondering, are there products now that are a combination, you know, like fertilizer plus or lime plus that have beneficial substances in them?
Yes, and it's probably was regulated. Some of them were regulated as fertilizer before, maybe 3 or 4 years ago. But then there were some that were just not registering, but selling and saying that they weren't fertilizer.
Hmm.
And that's what caused the agency to change this law and to bring them in. Because they consider this a consumer protection chapter. They consider this ensuring that the products that are sold are what they are, have in them, what they say they have in them, or don't, and then are effectively packaged and labeled so that the consumer knows what they are buying. And even if you buy in tonnage or you buy in bulk, they have to give you this information when they deliver it to you, when they deliver the bulk product. I don't know how often that happens, but it's supposed to happen.
Is there a hierarchy too for the agency, like say a product that, you know, here's a fertilizer that also has neonics in it, that also has biostimulants in it?
So remember, it's not supposed to be a pesticide.
If
If it has a pesticide in it, it's not one of these products.
it is defined as a pesticide,
It's
if
a
it,
pesticide.
so that's the hierarchy then?
Anything that's designed to kill a pest, and pest is broadly defined, it falls underneath FIFRA, the Federal Insecticide, Fungicide, and Rodenticide Act, and has to be registered, has to be approved by EPA for use, and then under state law has to be registered for use in order to kill things. So that's what they're registered for. There's usually a pesticide in every committee room. Because they're pretty much everywhere.
In our shoes, right?
I don't, normally the hand sanitizer is what I point out, but I don't see the hand sanitizer.
There it is.
There it is.
There you go.
It's enough to sanitize one member of the committee.
But that has an antimicrobial agent in it that's registered as a pesticide. So that's what that is. And honestly, you use things that you think are harm. I'll put it to you this way. You use cosmetics and pesticides more than you think you use cosmetics and pesticides. Because if it has any type of smell or coloring or et cetera, it's not soap, it's a cosmetic product. And if it has any functional service effectively, then it can also be a drug. And then if it's designed to kill something, it can also be a pesticide.
Athlete's foot, you know, like that's a pesticide.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Diet Coke.
Anyway, moving on, they do have to have efficacy data. It may be required to support beneficial substance ingredient claims if the ingredient is not presently defined by the Association of American Plant Food Control Officials. So it's not a mandate for every product, but the agency can require it if it's not a commonly recognized substance. Then there's the tonnage fees. Again, the fertilizer and lime pays the tonnage fees. There is no tonnage fee for beneficial substances, and where does it say that? Right there on page 14, line 21. The tonnage fees basically are a large part of what goes into the special fund for this program. But they're not paying them for the beneficial substances. Then you have inspection. The agency has the ability to inspect any of these products. They have the ability to inspect their distribution. They can enter premises to inspect. They can sample. They can require monitoring. They can enforce if you misbrand your product and say something's in it that's not, or it does something that it does not. They have the ability to enforce for misbranding. They have the ability to enforce for adulteration whenever there's something in it that basically could be harmful to human health or animal health or life, aquatic life, soil, or water. Then it will be deemed adulterated and it cannot be sold. If it has noxious weeds in it, if it has heavy metals in it, if it has radioactive substances in it, it's also adulterated. The agency is required on an annual basis to publish for the public, for the consumer, information concerning the distribution of fertilizers or beneficial substances, analysis on all of the official samples that they take to show whether or not the products are sincere and up to standard. They consult with UVM and other groups about how these products might cause water issues, how they might increase phosphorus, and any best management practices to reduce their use. This is kind of old language because you can't use phosphorus fertilizer on non-ag turf anymore. Then there's rulemaking authority. Then there's short weight authority. So if you package the product and it is short of the weight that it is labeled as, they can enforce against you. They can cancel your registration for violation of any of the provisions in the chapter. They can detain your fertilizer, your beneficial substance, or your lime if they believe that it's adulterated or it's being distributed in violation of the chapter. They can tell you to withdraw any of the product from distribution. Basically, it's a stop sale order. They can condemn and confiscate anything that's in violation with the chapter and order its destruction if necessary. The chapter doesn't regulate exchanges between manufacturers of any of these substances. So say you're manufacturer A in Barton, and there's another manufacturer B in White River. They can sell back and forth to each other without having to register because they're selling wholesale. They're not selling retail. So that's still allowed. And it includes importers, people from out of state. There's an administrative penalty. The penalty is assessed under the agency's general penalty authority, which is $5,000 for first offense, up to 15 max. And it's basically if you're going to violate any of the requirements of the chapter. And the whole thing would go into effect on July 1, 2025.
Representative Boston.
I guess I would like to hear why this makes a difference. I mean, it seems like the whole point is just to call them beneficial substances instead of naming them by individual names. Like, why is that better?
Well, it's to provide uniformity across the country, right? Because some states were requiring certain products to be registered and not other products because of the different ways that the different states were defining these products. And so there was just uncertainty. And now you have this uniform bill, uniform application, all falling underneath that umbrella definition. You don't have to make the agencies don't have to make a decision of whether or not it meets those definitions, because once it's recognized by APCO, then it's kind of like, all right, everybody regulates that.
So are we to assume that like 49 other states already use the word beneficial, or everybody else is considering it right now too? So
That's what they're supposed to do. So March of 2024, I believe,
Yeah.
or April 2024, in that timeframe is when this was adopted.
Yeah.
It rolled out to the states after that, and so it's very possible that other states have adopted this already.
We've invited the agency to come into the committee, and I think we should ask that question again. And we can ask some, other questions, but I think, that's sort of fundamental. How critical is it?
And the USDA?
Well, this states regulate this. This is not a USDA regulated program. This is the State Plant Food Officials Organization, so regulated through the states.
Yes.
What I like about it, it creates a list and holds them maybe a little bit accountable of the foo-foo dust and fairy breeze that they're trying to sell to people. There, I said it. There are so many of these things that have come out, especially in light of urea hitting $700, $800, $900 a ton. And so many of these things have come to the surface, and now it gives the department, they gotta be registered and they're tracked, and now they can follow them. And
Representative Brown.
I'm just curious if in this legislation, the agency has an idea of how many products this would actually impact and what the projected revenue would be from all of those additional annual.
They have been registering many of them already because plant amendments, soil amendments, and biostimulants have been subject to registration over the past 3 years. So they should have a pretty good idea. What's new would be the plant inoculants and the soil inoculants, which maybe they've been registered, but they've been classified as an amendment, or that's something I would want to talk to the agency about how those have been distinguished over the past couple of years.
Right. And I guess when I'm thinking about the inoculants, there are seed companies that a lot of vegetable farmers get seeds from, and things like peas or beans often come with an inoculant because they're a lot harder to germ in the soil. And I'm wondering, are they going to have to register themselves, like High Mowing or Johnny's, or because they're distributing inoculant?
If they're going to be advertising that for its inoculant purposes, then yeah, they're going to have to. If they're distributing it and they're making that claim, then yeah.
those are products that have been widely acceptable and used and beneficial. The rhizobia inoculants for legume plants, which use peas, beans, alfalfa, all soybeans, all of it. And I would think a lot of those probably already are registered, I would think.
Well, we can ask the agency to tell us whether there are things that would fall under new language that currently aren't captured. And if there's a revenue impact.
Great.
Do you have to run to another committee?
Okay, yeah, thanks for coming in, Mike. And if we have other questions about the language, we'll check with you.
All right.
Thank you, Mike. Mr. Brady.
So this, again, this is not a bill that's going to be on the wall, but it's something that if we want to take it up, we can turn it into a committee bill. And I did ask the agency if they would come in sometime, just to sort of do a clock check or a calendar check rather. We have, including the rest of this week, we have 3 weeks for the crossover date. So if we wanted to take any action on any bills that either are already in our committee or that might come into our committee, and have it be this year.
Many bills have to follow crossover too?
They do, yeah, yeah.
Unless we add stuff.
Yes, so there are, if the Senate sends us a bill and there's something we want to tack onto it that is germane as defined by the clerks, I guess, then that's an option too. So Be thinking just overnight, if there are, what we've seen 4 bills. We've seen this one, which makes 5.
What was the bill that was sent to us this morning?
That one, we're also going to take testimony on tomorrow, I hope. Yeah, good. That is, see if I can pull that up.
We got a total of 6 now.
Yes, thank you for reminding me about that one. We don't have that scheduled yet. That's a bill that's creating this, the special fund for emergency relief for farmers and loggers, I think.
Yeah, flood, basically for
Yeah.
things like happening in 23 and 24 with the frost and the flood.
Yeah, no, we're okay still.
Quick
Yeah.
money instead of waiting for FEMA.
Yeah, but yeah, or a little BGAT.
So, right, there's that one. I know there are other bills that legislators, some of them, you committee members, I think, are still working on too. So I've tried to schedule testimony on some of these, just to get, so we're moving things along and can hear as much as possible before that deadline. I think maybe tomorrow we can have a conversation about, okay, where we haven't heard testimony, what do we want to prioritize?
So like H-134, after having
Yes.
Representative Kimball in here and Ledge Council, and I could see that bill may take more time to work it out right, so that would stay right on the wall till next year.
Not necessarily. We could take testimony, see where we are. So on any of these, we could, if people say, oh, let's dig into that, we could take some testimony, see where we are with it, although I think you're probably right in projecting. But then we could still take testimony after the crossover date and then be better prepared next year to move on it.
So what happens with them where it says like the effective date would be July 1st, 2025, you just amend that to?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and with any of the bills that have come in, we are, free to do with the language as we feel is appropriate. So, just like with the bills that we were looking at today on the floor, they were all amended, I think.
Yeah,
And sometimes those are small things and sometimes they're big things. But yeah, dates would be one of that for sure.
yeah, I just learning the process.
And sometimes the bill, even after the second year, doesn't make it. The person can reintroduce the same bill. If there's some viability, you can reintroduce the same bill next biennium and
Yeah.
start all over again.
Well, that's what's happening with the right to farm bill.
Yeah.
It's been.
Retried from last time around.
Yeah, I'll probably start having it over in the Senate side.
Yeah, and I'm sure that's a lot of the bills that we've already seen. I'm sure they've gone through more than.
You know, I realized the education bill taking up appropriately a lot of people's time.
So I have my current use bill that I just submitted today, actually. That seems like it would kind of mesh well with the 134. And is there a way to, well, I guess we could word craft within this committee, but I don't know how that works when you have 2 bills that are almost saying the same thing.
Yeah, so we can
Find a way
certainly
to-
take pieces of one bill and put it into another.
It doesn't matter to me, yeah.
Now, what about a committee bill? Like we just heard this one. Say if we took 2 or 3 of those up there, we wanted to make our own committee bill. Does that still have to go to crossover?
It does have to go, it does have to be done by crossover, but we can do that. And it can be done. But if we wanted, and really what this means is that the Senate would agree to consider it possibly if it's before crossover. It's an agreement between the House and the Senate saying, if you get us the bills by this day, they'll be in play. If not, they won't be, because you have to, draw a line somewhere, and that's.
Even if it's passed across.
Yeah.
Although there are exemptions, right? The rules committee could.
Yeah, there are, I'm sure, exemptions, and there may be exemptions this year. But they would probably not be for bills that weren't high priority.
Right.
Yeah.
Like an egg. Well, maybe an egg is high priority.
Yes. Yeah, yeah. So the other thing that we have a little bit of a deadline on is our, as I mentioned earlier, our budget letter. So we've gotten a bunch of requests that we've either heard testimony on. There've been a couple that have come in, letters. I'm going to ask Sidonia if she can put that all in one place so that we can see an easy list of what they all are. We are not, we're not given a budget. I mean, the governor has a budget. We have a revenue target total, for the state that we are trying to meet. Appropriations committee will be meeting. They don't come to us and say, you can work with this amount. So we're free to go to appropriations and say, we've heard this request, we think it's a good one. We've heard this request, we think it's a good one. At some point, very likely though, they would come back and say, well, do you have anything you want to prioritize? Because we are only able to, we only have this much. So just be aware of that. And, again, we don't have to decide anything right now, but.
Okay, so that's a great segue into what I was asked today. The conservation districts are asking for a $3 million appropriation. Now we heard it. Hanson already say he got it at 500,000. And he said, we give them grants for their other dollars. Of course, they said they'd rather not have the right money for grants. They'd rather have the money up front. Do I go to appropriations and go to bat for the conservation districts, or do we talk about it as a committee? I don't know how to. I'm fiscally conservative. I know the work that the conservation districts do. They do a lot of great work. I don't know if they need $3 million. I don't know how easy they get the grants from the Department of Ag. I don't want to go to appropriations and say they need $3 million and have them laugh at me, send me back out the door.
Well, they won't, yeah, I hope they won't laugh.
Not to your face anyway.
But and I certainly, you wouldn't want to go in without feeling pretty comfortable about, the rationale for the request. But to answer your question, the committee can do that. We can have a conversation, and if we agreed that we supported any of these, we could say that. But you can also go individually and make the case.
But 8 might be more powerful.
I feel more comfortable that we kick it around ourselves.
Yeah.
And decide, how much we want to support more than what the department is doing or not. And I appreciate my conservation district. I also appreciate where everyone is with affordability in the state of Vermont right now. And if they're going to get, I would rather see us fund universal school meals. Feed people directly.
Yeah, and so we, ultimately, again, we would like to be able to support, all of these ideas, and we might say we support them all. We can say that initially. We might then at some point be asked to, make a priority.
And we can also have further testimony, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so
Yes.
like 7 million of grants, I had a question about that today, about whether that's like federal money that has to go to our agency before it flows through to the conservation district. So it's not as if the agency's fighting for that 7 million, but then they pass on,
This $3 million thought, more people come in and really tell us why they need that 3 million, and do they really need that? Would they be happy with a little less? More from them.
Yeah.
And the whole question of if they can leverage that, if that, they each hire a new grant person and that brings in 6 million, then that's a
Right.
persuasive
Yes,
number.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that the difference between the 7 million and the 500,000 is that 7 million essentially all gets passed on to projects, and the 300,000 or the 3 million figure would be going to the districts for staffing and other,
Well, they write a grant to have a water quality specialist, and they write a grant to have. And some of this stuff's funded, like the county forester up home works with conservation district, he's funded through forests and parks.
Is there ever, have you ever heard of a committee having an idea for funding too for this? Like we have, all this money we're requesting from approach, but is there sometimes sort of like a sister bill that we're like, why don't we tax, this? Or cut something else and move that money here?
yeah.
I've never seen that done, but it's potential. Right?
Yeah, I think it's unusual, partly because then you're starting talking about going to Ways and Means.
Right.
That would have to happen somehow at some point, I guess, anyway, unless you were taking the money from somewhere else.
Does that have to be a bill or is that something they could just put in there?
If they could add it to, but I mean, a committee could do that as well. If we had that we wanted to do that. A new tax on apples, for example.
Right. Sounds like a great. Tariff.
Not the apple, just the stem.
All apples from New York and Washington. Right?
Seeds, tax and seeds. Seed tax.
So anyway, that's that's sort of where we are right now, and we've got some testimony tomorrow from I thought we did. Anyway, tomorrow, if there are things you want to hear more about, let me know and we'll get that scheduled next few days.
That would be great if Sidonia could come up with like a spreadsheet with like what last year's budget was, what was space, what was, so we could have it all the information right in front of us would be great. What the ask is.
I've also got, speaking of letters, a letter that I worked on over the weekend that I'm sending off to the other committees about the school meals. So that will get posted. I'll share it with everybody too. It's 4 pages of background and numbers.
Do we all sign that?
No, it's just from me, but it says that you all support it, so.
Yesterday, we had the Orleans County Farm Bureau legislative breakfast. And we all spoke of what was going on in our committee. And Larry Labor wasn't there, so I got to speak for environment. And I talked about the water quality bill, of course, and Leanne Harple was our member for it. Nice young lady, and she got up and spoke about education. And the meeting went hard right into education, and we talked about education for 45 minutes. And a couple of people, legislators, said that's not the intent of that meeting. And I said, well, I thought the intent of the meeting was talk about whatever was going on here, whatever they felt was pertinent to them. And they wanted to hear a lot about education, and we went into it. And the universal school meals.
I wasn't here the last 2 years. Was it a contentious thing when they voted on it?
Which one?
Yeah.
Biennium?
No, 2 years ago. Yeah, no, it was. I think that it was. I was kind of surprised that there was a roll call even, but somebody who felt passionate about it, I think, wanted to have it be on record, but it was pretty.
It passed.
Yeah, quite well. Yeah.
I feel like there were 20 votes no or something, because like there was a sprinkling. It wasn't just partisan either, the people that voted no, but it it was some small minority.
So I've had a couple of people today came to me from our own party asking why I would do that. I explained it best I could, and
Yeah.
I guess they might have been one of the, couple of the 20.
Yeah.
Food Bank is coming in tomorrow. They have a budget request that is maybe a little bit broader than what they had mentioned here earlier, because I guess they did. There's three different pieces to it, and one of them is the Vermonters Feeding Vermonters, which is clearly our jurisdiction. There's two other pieces that have in the past gone to Human Services and maybe to GovOps, and they've asked us now to do all of it. And so we all reach an agreement that we'll hear all of that. So anyway, I will see everybody tomorrow. 9:30, yeah.
That sounds good.
So Leland, I just looked it up. It's 122 yes and 25 no. 122 yes and 25 no.
Last year's
For
vote,
the
2 years
23
ago.
roll call, the roll call vote on universal school meals.
What year was that? 20?
23.